Number 10. Memnon. We're kicking this list off with one of the greatest warriors ever. Memnon was said to be an immortal warrior from Greek mythology, who was one of the best warriors in the land, second only to the great Achilles. He's an Ethiopian king and really the most prevalent African figure in all of Greek mythos. It's said that he was killed by the only man who was a better warrior than him, Achilles, who might have also been immortal. Maybe it was like South Park rules, it takes an immortal to kill an immortal. Number 9. Merlin. We all know Merlin. He's one of the most famous characters from English myth. Being the guy who helped King Arthur, it must be easy to become king when you have a wizard in your back pocket. But what if he isn't myth? What if the character is real and is still walking around to this day? There's evidence of characters like Merlin or Merlin himself popping up again and again through English history. Some people believe that he's still alive and still protecting the royal family. Maybe if he's still alive, he should retire from protecting some of the richest people in the world and help out the rest of us. Why not cast a spell that gives me a good night's sleep for once? Number 8. Hercules. One of the buffest dudes in history. If you don't know the story of Hercules, he was basically a demigod and he wanted to be a god. And the gods told him, if you want to be a god, you gotta show everyone how much of a stud you are. And he did. He killed a lion with his bare hands, then he killed a multi-headed fire-breathing hydra, and he went to the underworld and captured the gatekeeper of the underworld. This dude's a legend, and his core strength must have been insane. Now the story goes that he was never given his wish and granted godhood, but many people believe that the myth is wrong and this is just the story that was passed around. That the true story is that he was gifted his rightful god power and immortality. As long as he never told a soul, he would keep his godhood. I mean, you wouldn't want him to tell anyone because then there would be a bunch of people trying to kill stuff trying to become gods. Number 7. Sir Galahad. One of the most famous knights of the Round Table. The original boys club. I bet they all met in a treehouse, you had to climb a rope ladder to get into it. You could only get in if you knew the secret password and there was a sign on the door that said no girls allowed. I might be mixing up King Arthur's knights with the Little Rascals. Anyways, Sir Galahad was the illegitimate son of Sir Lancelot and Elaine of Corbetic, and it said he is one of the people who has found the Holy Grail. Drinking from said grail is supposed to grant the person immortality. Now just like Merlin, Galahad is supposed to be one thing of legend, but some people believe that the knights did exist and are still in charge of secret underground cults to this day. If this is real, I would want footage of someone putting Galahad in one of Elon Musk's rockets and his face as he gets shot into space. Nothing like a 1,000-year-old man seeing what space looks like. Number 6. Conan O'Brien. Let's take a hard left turn out of myth and turn it to something that might be one of the strangest on the list. Late night TV show host Conan O'Brien. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because of this picture. This is a comparison picture between Conan and a Civil War soldier. They're eerily close to each other. Maybe Conan is closer to Wolverine than the hilarious ginger comic we have all come to know and love. What if all his jokes are just a way he can cover up his PTSD from fighting in centuries of wars? I mean, good for him. To go from war vet to American celebrity, that's a big jump that almost no one could do. Maybe back on the battlefield, no one thought he was funny, so he became immortal out of sheer willpower, just so he could stay alive long enough to find his audience. Number 5. James Bedford. If you're going to die, but you have faith that in the future they'll be able to bring you back to life, then why not throw your body into a giant freezer? James Bedford was the first person ever to be cryogenically frozen. He was an American psychology professor at the University of California and wanted his body to be preserved for later days, just in case they ever figured out a way to bring frozen people back from the dead so they could walk around again. If this was ever to happen, he would be first in line. He passed away in 1967, and right after he was pronounced legally dead, they threw him in a big chest freezer and set it to Ice Age. I'm sure it was more scientific than that, but you get the idea. Now, we haven't come across the technology to resurrect this guy, but if we do, he's gonna get the Captain America treatment and be very close to being immortal. Number 4. Hugh Glass. Have you ever seen The Revenant? The movie where Leonardo DiCaprio has the worst weekend ever? Well, in that movie, he plays frontiersman Hugh Glass. Now, Hugh Glass was mauled by a bear and left for dead and had to trek for miles and miles with broken bones and brutal wounds and survived. How did he do this? Well, the history books said he did this with grit, determination, and pure survivalist instincts. But the deep dark corners of the internet have other opinions. Some people are pushing the idea that he's an immortal or has some sort of Deadpool healing factor. This would allow him to survive such a brutal attack and make it back to full health. And if this is true, he might still be alive to this day, keeping his healing ability secret from the public. Number 3. Jack Lucas. One of the biggest bad all time. This guy literally might be unkillable. I don't want to trash talk him because I'm pretty sure he would find me and come beat the hell out of me. Jack Lucas fought in World War II, and while serving, he jumped on 2 Japanese grenades and survived both explosions. And not like barely even survived, he kept serving in the army. Maybe back then Japanese craftsmanship wasn't what it is now. After this, he became a paratrooper, and on one of his jumps, his chute didn't deploy. Now you think plummeting to the earth would surely just kill you. Not Jack Lucas. His buddies found him alive and well. This dude is probably like a werewolf or a robot or like a robot werewolf. Number 2. Roy Benavides. We're gonna stay on this trend of people who could beat up anyone's dad with Roy Benavides. Roy Benavides was a special forces officer. He stepped on a landmine in 1965 and he was told he would never walk again. And he was like, not only am I gonna walk again, I'm gonna go back and fight in war again. And he did. He fought in the Vietnam War. During one battle, he was leading a small troop and they were under attack by over 1,000 Vietnamese soldiers. By the time the fighting was done, he had been wounded by either gunfire, knives, or shrapnel 37 times. 37! He was pronounced dead and put in a body bag. Then, he came back to life and unzipped the body bag he was inside. Death probably looked at this guy and was like, nah, you're too much for me. We're trying to build a nice neighborhood over here. You stay alive. Number 1. Tsutomu Yamaguchi. What's the worst week you've ever had? Whatever it is, I bet it's not as bad as this guy. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima in 1945 when the first atomic bomb dropped. He obviously survived. I mean, he's on our list of immortals. He did sustain some injuries. His skin was burned and one of his eardrums was ruptured. But for an atomic bomb dropping, that's like leaving relatively unscathed. So he was injured and he went home to Nagasaki. 3 days later, he was at work sharing his crazy story of how he saw the atomic bomb get dropped. And then, if you know your history, the second atomic bomb was dropped and the dude survived again. He took back-to-back atomic bomb bombings and walked away with an earache. This dude could very well be immortal or at least radiation proof. At number 10 we have Orlando Bloom. We'll kick off this list with a man who's so handsome it would probably make more sense if he actually was immortal. His cheekbones are so sharp he could cut wood with them, and then he would use that wood to build a nice romantic fire and then stare deep into your eyes. Only if dreams really did come true. Well, this heartthrob has been making more than hearts just throb for maybe over 100 years because he looks a lot like this Romanian painter. This guy is Nicolae Grigorescu, and the two of them have a striking resemblance. Maybe they just look similar. Maybe they were separated at birth. Well, the latter obviously isn't the case because all of you at home can tell how old this picture is. In fact, it's from 1877. So has Orlando been giving sweet dreams to all the girls since before he was chasing around Jack Sparrow and saving Middle Earth? I hope so. I never want those luscious locks and diamond jawline to go away. We need it. Number 9. Alex Chu. Now there's no way of really proving you're immortal. It's something you would just have to trust someone on. And since no one has done it before, you can bet most people who say they aren't actually immortal. And this guy might be one of them. Alex Chu is 48 years old and the dude says he's unlocked the secrets to immortality. He says he has done this through what he calls immortality rings. I feel like you guys all know where this is going, but I'm just gonna keep breaking down Alex Chu's philosophy for you. So he claims he uses these rings to make his cells regenerate. So these rings basically turn you into Wolverine. Oh my god, why didn't I think of that? Or any of the other billions of people living on this earth. He made these so-called power rings by modernizing ancient Chinese medicine. And here's the best part that I know you've all been waiting for. You can buy these rings on Amazon. Yes, the power of eternal youth can be yours for just 6 easy payments of $49.99. Why wait on living forever when you can start right now? I think you can always tell when someone's trying to screw you over if they're trying to sell you something in the process. Number 8. Leonard Jones. You know, if you get the nickname Live Forever, you might be the guy who's actually figured out how to beat the Reaper. Either that or everyone around you is mocking you, like when they call a guy who's 4'11" big guy.
Go ahead and attack me, big.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I never get tired of that clip. Well, Leonard Jones was a politician back in the 1800s, and he had a lot of people convinced that he was immortal. He even ran for president on a campaign about being immortal, and he said he was going to make his voters immortal. That's a bold move, dude. Like, how do you plan on getting the young voters? Magic. He didn't end up becoming president, obviously, I think because his keys to becoming immortal were you were never allowed to be immoral. And that you had to pray a lot. I think that everyone was like, I would rather have sex and die than live my whole life a huge nerd. And it seems like he didn't follow his own rules because at age 70 he died. Or maybe he just tricked us and he's still alive somewhere, watching all of us have fun and party while he's not allowed to eat shellfish. Number 7. Betty Lou Oliver. I mean, we've all had bad days. Sometimes you wake up and everything starts going wrong. You go to make your coffee and you're out of coffee. You go to have a shower and the pipes froze. You check your Facebook and someone leaked your nudes. But nothing can match the level of trash Betty Lou Oliver went through. It was New York in July of 1945. There was a major fog that was covering the city, so all the planes that were flying through had to do so in terrible visibility. I'm pretty sure back then if you had to land a plane, you did it with luck and a wish from a genie. Well, one of these planes got lost in the fog and smashed into the Empire State Building. This killed 11 people and sent Betty Lou flying back, breaking a bunch of her bones, including her pelvis. Betty got put into the No Love Club. When police and paramedics arrived to rescue her, they had to take her down the elevator because she obviously couldn't walk with a broken pelvis. When they were going down, the elevator cord snapped and she fell 75 stories. And Betty Tough as Nails Oliver survived, while breaking the record for surviving the longest elevator fall. I mean, if she's not immortal, she's got at least 5 stars on durability, but just 1 star for luck. Number 6. Boris Kiprianovich. In the year 2000, there was a kid who started to get some big time fame because he told everyone that he was immortal. Not only that he was immortal, but that he came from Mars. We got a combo one here, a Martian that can live forever. And if you're wondering if he's got more crazy theories about himself, he does. Now that he's older, he claims that he used to take trips between here and Mars so he could do surveillance on the human race, and that other Martians do this too. We never see them because they live underground. Way to spill the beans, dude. If there are Martians underground, they're probably like, what the hell, man? Why are you blowing up my spot? Number 5. Roy C. Sullivan. This is another person on the list who has the worst luck imaginable. If you thought falling down an elevator shaft with a broken pelvis was unlucky, try getting struck by lightning 7 times. Roy C. Sullivan has the record for the most times struck by lightning, and it never took him out. He got burned a few times but never died. He's probably carrying around an amulet of Zord, which gives you +7 to lightning resistance. He shot himself in 1993, but that might have been him faking his own death because people were starting to catch on that this guy can't be killed. Number 4. The Wandering Jewish Man. This is a perfect case of knowing when to shut your mouth. The story of the Wandering Jewish Man is that he had front row tickets to the crucifixion, and as Jesus was passing him with the cross, he told him to pick up the pace. So Jesus did the sly move of putting a curse on him so he would walk the earth until Jesus returned for the second coming. Bad move, dude. If this story is real, I bet this guy probably has a podcast where he talks about what the Jets need to do to win a Super Bowl, even though he's never played football a day in his life. This guy probably has never learned. Number 3. Gene Roddenberry. All of you Star Trek nerds out there know this guy. He's the creator of Star Trek. He made one of the greatest franchises of all time for keeping the antisocial entertained. Well, what you might not know about this legend is he survived 3 plane crashes. This dude did Unbreakable before Bruce Willis had his first headshots. And these weren't simple little crashes. A bunch of other people died in these crashes. Gene may just be immortal, and that's why he survived. One of these planes was even on fire before it went down and then smashed right into a desert. They say he died from a heart attack, but I wouldn't be surprised if the aliens came down to give him some ideas for a new run of Star Trek, and then they all became good buds and he just decided to take off with them. I mean, if he is immortal. Number 2 on the list, the immortal monk. In 1926, the Buddhists had a big time stress. They're all trying to chill out and become enlightened and stuff, and then Stalin made the call to kill all these dudes. How are you gonna kill a bunch of Buddhist monks, dude? All they want to do is sit cross-legged and not get bothered by YouTube ads. Well, the leader of this tribe of monks told his followers to go into hiding while he went into a deep meditation. He said he would come out in 75 years, and this guy was meditating to win. He was buried in the lotus position, and then 75 years later, he was dug up and he was dead. However, his body was in pristine condition for how long it had been buried. It was like McDonald's used the same stuff they used to keep their food preserved, they used on this monk so he wouldn't rot away. The monks from his village believe that he's in such good condition because he's still in a meditative state, and he will return when he's ready to break from living in nirvana. If I was him, I would wait till after we fix global warming. Number 1 on the list is Qin Shi Huang. This guy was the emperor of China, and his dynasty lasted over 400 years. He was a huge hit with the people too. They were so in love with him that they thought he was a god and he was destined to live forever and rule over them forever. He humored his followers by sending out people to try and find all sorts of fountains of youth. I want people to like me so much. I want them to want me to live forever and me to be their king forever. It must be so good for your self-esteem. What ended up happening was he poisoned himself with mercury. Back then they thought the cool liquid metal could make you live forever, but it just makes you go crazy and then you die. Or did it work and now he's part of the shadow government that runs the world? Really, either or is possible. At number 10 we have Ashwatthama. An invincible warrior from Indian mythology. This guy is a tank who could take on entire armies single-handedly. This guy is a cross between Thor and Kratos. This dude is unstoppable. He's fought in several battles and was never killed. He's said to have mastered over 64 different forms of martial arts and possesses a great intellect of all weaponry. This could have just been a myth passed down from generation to generation, but many myths are rooted in a little bit of truth, like the myth of the werewolf was most likely based on rabies. Some people believe that Ashwatthama was an actual warrior who never died in battle because of his great skill, but also because he could never be killed. This juggernaut would be hanging out in the shadows waiting for someone to try and put the pressure on India, and if they did make this brutal mistake, he would spring into action and remind everyone why this legend has never died. At number 9 we have Methuselah. If there was anyone believed to be immortal from the Bible, it was this dude. Methuselah was the grandfather of Noah who built the famous ark. Well, Noah built the ark, not this guy, don't get confused in my language. There is nobody in the Old Testament that matches this guy when it comes to being an old geezer. This guy holds the record for the oldest guy in the book, unless you count God, but that's kind of cheating. I mean, he's been there since the beginning. And this guy really lived his life to the fullest. He didn't even have kids until he was 187. I can imagine all the girls had the talk with him along the way. He was like, baby, I'm not ready to settle down. I'm only 108. I got my whole life ahead of me. The Old Testament says he lived until he was 969, which is a bummer. He was so close to 1000. That would have been an amazing party. But it wasn't old age that killed the original millennial, but it was the great flood brought down by God Almighty. But what if this guy was a really good swimmer and he was able to outlast the flood? I mean, he was able to outlast the aging process, so I could believe he could tread water for a very long time. At number 8 we have Jesus. Let's keep on the Bible theme with the guy who is the Son of God. I mean, I think he's the Son of God. I never went to church. Please don't get mad at me if I got this wrong. I don't know how it works. It said there'll be a second coming of Christ, and even if there isn't, he was able to endure a lot. Even 7 days hanging on a crucifix, people checking his pulse confirming he's dead, and then him being locked up in a tomb for 3 days, Jesus just bounced back like me after 2 espressos. So I think it's safe to say that Jesus is immortal. But this is a list of scary things, and Jesus is maybe the nicest person that has ever lived. He is literally the symbol of kindness, so why would I put him on here? Well, there are some people that believe the second coming of Christ will also bring rapture, the end of days, fire raining down from the sky and ruining my favorite burrito stand. If Jesus is in fact alive and waiting for the right opportunity to come back, then there might be a whole bunch of other stuff in the Bible that could come true, which is a very spooky future. At number 7 we have Qin Shi Huang. This dude is one of the most legendary figures in Chinese history. The Qin dynasty helped shape China and really built the foundation of the China we knew for centuries to come. You know the Great Wall of China? That was this guy. You know the Terracotta Army? That was also this guy. You know panda bears? Well, that wasn't him. Panda bears, like, they naturally, however happened, I don't know. But if he had the opportunity to make a cuddly new mascot for the face of China, he totally would have. He was so loved by his people that they believed him to be immortal, and they even sent out servants all over the globe to try and find the secret of eternal life for him. Unfortunately, all the men he sent out were unsuccessful. Big surprise. And Big Papa Quinn died in 210 BC. Or did he? Some people think that his servants were successful in finding the key to eternal life. They brought it back to him. He used it, but he understood it was too powerful for just any man to get his hands on. So he had to hide the elixir, faked his own death, and has been running China in the shadows ever since. Whoa. At number 6 we have Tithonus. This one is pulled right out of Greek mythology and sticks to the theme of classic Greek myths by being depressing and ill-omened. Tithonus was one of the princes of Troy, one of the most noble houses in all of Greece. He caught the eye of Eos, the goddess of dawn. Even though Tithonus was just immortal, she wanted a piece of that guy. I mean, it makes sense. This guy was basically a prince from ancient Greece. I bet he had abs you could break a brick on and a face carved out of marble. Well, the two fell in love, and Eos being a god, she would live forever. She wanted her lover Tithonus to live forever with her, so she begged Zeus to grant him eternal life, which he did. But Eos made a grave mistake. She only asked Zeus to grant him eternal life, not eternal youth. Zeus is so petty. So Tithonus could not die, but he was aging brutally. Eventually he was a vegetable, and Eos turned him into a cicada for some reason. So if you ever see a cicada that you just can't kill, it might be Tithonus who is just bummed out because he got the bad end of a really bad deal. At number 5 we have Vlad the Impaler, the ancient king of what is now Romania. This man is known to be one of the most brutal men who has ever existed. He was born in 1428 and died in 1477, and in that time he maimed, tortured, and displayed so many bodies he got the nickname Vlad the Impaler. But why is he on this list if he's dead? Or is he dead? The legend of Dracula comes from this guy. It was due to his brutality, but what if he was actually the Dark Lord? He might be roaming around sucking people's blood all throughout Europe. Doesn't it make it easier to sleep at night knowing vampires might be real? At number 4 we have Diane de Poitiers. Back in the day, people didn't really know a lot about science. They would usually just put shiny stuff on things and hope for the best. Like when people used to put mercury on the top of top hats to make them shiny, and then people went crazy from mercury poisoning. We have a similar case with Diane de Poitiers, who was a mistress of King Henry II. She would drink a gold elixir to try and keep herself young. She died at the age of 66, and her autopsy showed that she had chronic gold poisoning. But what if she didn't die? She was known for her youthful beauty. That was probably the main reason that King Henry had her as one of his mistresses. And after she died, she was casted out from the kingdom because she was constantly seducing the king. That makes sense. But what if that was all a cover-up? Follow me down the conspiracy road for just a moment. What if her elixir worked and she shared it with King Henry? He then faked his death and was able to escape the public eye. After that, Diane de Poitiers exiled herself to be with her now new lover, and they're both in the Illuminati. Sounds pretty airtight if you ask me. At number 3 we have Leonard Jones. I love Leonard Jones because I can always appreciate a good con man. This guy was born in 1797 and had the dreams of becoming a great politician. But he didn't do that through a campaign of more jobs and tax breaks. Oh no. His campaign platform was vote for me and I'll make you immortal. A very ballsy move if you ask me. But it worked. He was never able to become president of the United States, but he was able to become a strong contender. To be honest, if someone had this as their platform, I would be pretty on board. Who needs a president to offer a better living situation for the modern family when this guy is saying you can live forever? That's a way better deal. At number 2 we have the 3 Nephites. Before Jesus moved on from us as we knew him in flesh and blood, he chose 12 apostles. 3 of them chose to stay behind with mankind to help make sure we stayed on track. They were called the 3 Nephites. Since then there have been stories of kind strangers guiding kings and stopping violence all throughout history. After these mystery men help out, they disappear, never to be seen again. This could be the Nephites hiding from us, waiting for the right moment to help. At least one of them probably works for WikiLeaks right now. And for our number 1 spot, we have Charles Edouard Brown Sicard. Alright, for the number 1 spot, we have a man who, like many of the other people on this list, thought he discovered the Fountain of Youth. The reason I put him at number 1 is because of the ingredients he used, and he was actually a very respected scientist for his time. Charles lived throughout the 17th century and was known for his extensive studies about the human brain, but his reputation would be tarnished when he went went public with what he thought was the fountain of youth. He concocted a serum that he claimed could help a person live forever, and the main ingredient was guinea pig testicles. He was so confident in his discovery that he started giving it out for free. He's now of course dead, but the scary part about this is what if he was right? What if guinea pig testicles hold the answer to everlasting youth? I mean, it wouldn't really be scary for us, but it would be so scary for guinea pigs.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have Alex Jew. He is a 46-year-old man who claims to be immortal. How has he achieved that? Through the use of his immortality rings. He invented these small magnetic rings to be worn on people's fingers and toes to ensure that people's cells always heal properly and never die. Apparently, if the cells constantly regenerate, then the person never dies. He says he has modernized ancient Chinese medicine to make immortality accessible for everyone. You can actually buy these rings on Amazon right now, although I don't recommend it. They come in either black or white, although the black one costs more because it's stronger, apparently. Listen, I don't know how it all works. I'm just a mere mortal. Next up at number 9, we have Leonard Jones. He was an American politician born in 1797 who claimed to be immortal. More interestingly though, he claimed that anyone else could be immortal, you just needed the right amount of fasting and praying. He found a preacher that believed the same as him, and together they founded the Live Forever faith and tried to recruit people to found a city of immortals. While they were recruiting, the preacher died. Apparently, Leonard Jones was very much embarrassed when he had to speak at the funeral of his immortal partner. He then switched to politics and tried to run for US president many times, with his main policy being, his immortality. Sadly, he lost a lot of support when he died, age 71, and people say you can't trust politicians. Alright, at number 8 now, we have the Wandering Jewish Man. In medieval Europe, there was a story of a Jewish man who was there at the crucifixion of Jesus. As he saw Jesus carrying the cross, the man taunted him and told him to hurry up. Jesus then turned to look at him and cursed him to walk the earth until he returned in the second coming. His name was Ahasuerus, and countless people said they saw him wandering the earth hundreds of years later. Sometimes he was old, sometimes young, or even changed between the two. Others say it's simply a story of symbolism for the Jewish diaspora that have moved across the earth over the past millennia. What do you guys think? Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Immortal Monk. In 1927, the leader of a group of Russian Buddhist monks gathered his followers to announce his own death. His name was Dashi Dorzo Itigelov. He predicted that Stalin, Russia's leader, would persecute them, and he warned them to flee. Then he said he would return in 75 years, and in a deep meditation he passed away. Then many years later his body was exhumed. The monks were amazed to find his body perfectly preserved. His limbs were flexible and the skin was elastic. In 2002 his body was put on display in the temple. It was 75 years on and he had apparently returned. The Buddhists believe that he remains in a deep meditative state on the edge of life and death. Next up at number 6 now, we have Nicholas Flamel. You might recognize this guy's name from Harry Potter as the immortal wizard who created the Philosopher's Stone and was a good friend of Dumbledore's. Well, that fiction is based on the real Nicholas Flamel. He was a French scribe born in 1340, and records show that he died in 1418. However, hundreds of years later, in the 1700s, stories started to emerge that he was still alive. People said he was an alchemist who had discovered the real Philosopher's Stone and achieved immortality. There are people who believe Flamel faked his own death and went into hiding to protect this powerful artifact from getting into the wrong hands, and that he's still out there today. Coming at number 5 now, we have Merlin. Merlin was said to be the legendary wizard figure at the court of King Arthur. King Arthur himself is a figure that is steeped in both history and legend. It's often difficult to untwine the two. Merlin was said to be half human, half demon. His demonic side was where he inherited his incredible powers and abilities, but his human side put them to work for good. One of these inherited powers was immortality. Believers in his existence say that you can find sightings of Merlin throughout British history, many hundreds of years after his time with King Arthur. Others say this is just retellings of the same story. The only way to find the truth is to keep picking apart the fact from the fiction. At the number 4 spot now, we have the 3 Nephites. According to Mormons, Jesus visited what is now America after his resurrection. He chose 12 apostles, and when his time came to leave, 3 of them asked to stay behind forever to help humanity and watch over them. Jesus was said to have granted this, and Mormons believe the 3 Nephites still walk among us today. As proof of this, they point to stories of kind strangers helping people throughout history before disappearing without a trace. Next up at number 3 now, we have Achilles. I'm sure you've all heard of the phrase Achilles' heel. This is the guy it comes from. He was said to be a legendary Greek hero of the Trojan War. The story goes that when he was a baby, he was dipped into the river Styx, the river that separates Earth from the underworld. This made him invulnerable to everything, even death itself, effectively making him immortal, except for one tiny thing. They held him in the river by his ankle, meaning that his ankle was totally vulnerable. He was killed by a poison arrow to that ankle in a battle, thus bringing his immortality to a swift end. Achilles' heel really was his Achilles' heel. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Count of Saint Germain. He was a European nobleman who was born in 1691 and was known for his works in science, the arts and philosophy. He was said to have attained immortality after drinking an elixir which he made through his mastery of alchemy. He travelled European courts where nobles were astonished to see he had not aged a single day in the 50 years since they last saw him. Many people said that he could live forever, even himself having confessed on at least one occasion to be 300 years old using the secrets of universal medicine. Records show he died in 1784 at the age of 93, but there have been countless stories of his appearance since then, even as recently as the 1970s. Alright, finally at number 1 now, we have Qin Shi Huang. He was a famous Chinese emperor whose dynasty lasted 400 years. Some of the most famous works under his rule include the Terracotta Army and parts of the Great Wall of China. He was said to be so loved by his people that they thought of him as an immortal. This was a prophecy Qin Shi was more than happy to fulfill, and he became obsessed with seeking immortality. On 2 occasions, he sent hundreds of people out into the world to find the legendary elixir of life. Both times were a failure. In the end, he died of mercury poisoning after he ate too many mercury pills given to him by his doctors to try and make him mortal. Oh dear.
Let's start us off number 10 with Rosalie Lombardo. I wanted to talk about her first because of how well her body was preserved. I mean, just take a look at this picture right here. Honestly, it looks like a little girl sleeping. How long would you guess she's been dead for? Well, if you guess 92 years, you guys would be right. This was just so incredible. She has been embalmed so well. Special embalming techniques were used. All of her organs are remarkably intact. Maybe she can come back to life one day when technology is there. Well, this little girl is just 1 year old. Okay, it's time to up the age by hundreds of years. At number 9, we have La Doncella, Inca Maiden. La Doncella is currently on display so people can see her in Argentina's Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, which is a city in Argentina. I think this would be so amazing to see one day. La Doncella has been mummified over 500 years ago, and today she still looks like she can open up her eyes and you can just I don't know, just come to life. This particular little girl was the best preserved for the 1500s, and she was actually sacrificed in an Inca religion ritual. Her body froze in the cold on top of a mountain, and it wasn't until more recently when her body was found and then professionally preserved. So scientists can really study the body to find out more about the history and find out who this little girl was. An Inuit baby is up next on this list on number 8. This baby takes us back 537 years ago. This particular Inuit baby was part of a group of 8 mummies found in 1972 grave site in Greenland. The graves dated back to 1475 AD. There were 6 women and 2 children found. This was one of the 2 children that was found and preserved. The woman found at the gravesite had a malignant tumor near the base of her skull, which most likely caused her to die. The Inuit baby is said to be a boy aged about 6 months, and it appeared to have been buried alive with her. Number 7, we have Zinzu. Zin was also known as a Lady Day. Zin gained fame more than 2,000 years after her death because her tomb was just discovered back in 1971. Her body was exceptionally preserved. Along with her body, there was hundreds of valuable artifacts and documents. Her body is now under the care of Hunan Provincial Museum. They are making sure to keep her body perfectly preserved so it can be around forever. Her body does go on display ever so often. Zin was born back in 213 BC, which is so crazy because we get to witness something older than 2,000 years. And it's a human we get to see. A human that's over 2,000 years old. Now at number 6, we have a a mummy who is 2,200 years old. This right here is the Grabal man, who was discovered back in 1952, perfectly naturally preserved. The man dated back to the late 3rd century BC during the early Chromatic Iron Age. There was wounds found on this man that suggested that he was killed by having his throat slashed. He was most likely sacrificed. His corpse was then put into a bag and was buried. Well, this bag fused to his body, not allowing the body to decompose. Instead, it was naturally preserved. Number 5, we have a 2,300-year-old mummy. This right here is the Tolan man. He was a naturally mummified corpse that dates back to the 4th century BC during the time of the pre-Roman Iron Age. He was discovered back in 1950s in Denmark. His body was actually so well preserved that when he was found in the 50s, he was actually mistaken for a murder that just recently happened. The Tolan man was also likely sacrificed. A lot of people back in the day sacrificed themselves for a greater good. It was a greater good for their people. There were so many different beliefs back then. We think it's pretty crazy now. Some thought that they do it to please their gods and spirits. Some other reasons were for cannibalism. There just wasn't enough food, so you have to sacrifice your body so the rest can eat. Alright, number 4, we have Ur David. That dates back over 3,000 years ago. Ur David was a part of a group of mummies that was discovered back at the start of the 20th century in China. The cemetery contained 23 mummies, and Ur David was one of the, best preserved ones. Also, his son was discovered right next to him. He had a 1-year-old baby with brown hair. The baby had a blue felt cap on. The clothes found in these mummies helped scientists and researchers find, how they lived back then. How did they live 3,000 years ago? Number 3, we have another mummy that dates back 3,000 years ago. And actually, this is a female Torturan mummy that lived around 1000 BC. You can really see what this woman looked like. Her hair still hasn't fallen off. This woman is in her 40s and she still has braids in her hair. If you can look closely, but not too close enough because it's actually a bit freaky, you can see the woman's eyelashes. Her eyelashes are still there. It's just so amazing how this woman was naturally preserved. King Tut makes its way onto this list. Number 2, this is a mummy who's about 3,335 years old. It's so crazy how experts can pinpoint an age of human dating back thousands of years ago. This is a more familiar mummy that we all know because this was an Egyptian pharaoh that dates back to the 18th dynasty. This was well known as a new kingdom or sometimes a new empire period of time. This body was discovered back in 1922 by Howard Carter, and now it rests in the Egyptian Museum for people to see. There were some artifacts in the tomb as well, and those were put on display. Again, I would love to see this in real life. Finally, at number 1, we have the mummy that is 5,300 years old. This right here is the famous Otzi, the Iceman. This is a well-preserved mummy of a man that dates back 3,300 BCE time. This mummy was found back in 1991 in the Otzil Alps, hence the name. He is also Europe's oldest known natural mummy, and he offered an unprecedented amount of information on how people lived back in the day. His body right now is in Italy. I wish I knew that before I went to Italy because I would have loved to see his body. The man is believed to be about 45 years old, which is quite old for the time period. This corpse has been extremely examined, measured, and x-rayed to try to get as much information as we can on.
Coming in at number 10, we have ginger. Have you ever had a ginger shot? They certainly make me feel immortal if nothing else. Officially, ginger can treat nausea, help digestion, reduce muscle pain, treat osteoarthritis, lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol levels, fight heart disease, reduce menstrual cramps, and it can help fight infections. On top of that, current studies link ginger to an improvement in brain functions. There is also an antioxidant that can help protect from Alzheimer's. It is thought that ginger has some anti-cancer properties and may be great at helping prevent pancreatic, breast, ovarian, and colon cancer. Ginger for the absolute win, it sounds like. Coming in at number 9, we have cinnamon. So really, the cinnamon challenge will make you immortal. I mean, I guess not quite, you'll probably throw up. But in moderation, cinnamon is great. Cinnamon regulates your blood sugar, reducing risks of heart disease. In fact, 1 gram of cinnamon a day can reduce bad cholesterol. If you want help metabolizing sugar, cinnamon is your boy. Coming in at number 8, we have guava. Guava is an absolute babe. Not only does guava pack a serious potassium potassium punch, it also has the highest concentration of lycopene of any food. Potassium is incredible for muscle building, and lycopene fights risks of prostate cancer. So basically, guava is good and also really fun to say. Coming in at number 7, we have walnuts. I blooming love a walnut, and there is a happy irony here. Not only do walnuts look like teeny tiny brains, they also help your brain. Nuts in general are fantastic for the brain. Walnuts are fantastic when it comes to fighting Alzheimer's, and they're good for memory in general. They've been linked to alleviating stress, tension, and depression. Coming into number 6, we have kale. Forget spinach, modern day Popeye would be smashing down the kale. How very millennial of him. Not only is it high in iron, which helps blood flow, cell growth, and promotes good liver function, it is also high in vitamins. Vitamin K is especially prevalent in kale, which is pretty apt. Vitamin K is great for bone health and blood cells. It's also good for people with Alzheimer's. Kale is a natural anti-inflammatory, which means it's great for people suffering with asthma and things like arthritis. Kale is also king when it comes to helping your immune system, as well as keeping your liver healthy. Also, there's no end to its goodness, it's also filled with calcium, so hurrah for kale. Coming in at number 5, we have cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper has been used for its medicinal purposes for around 9,000 years. It lowers high cholesterol, relieves pain, stops diarrhea, helps digestion, improves circulation, and really helps osteoarthritis. It also has loads of vitamin C, B6, vitamin E, manganese, and flavonoids. Flavonoids, what a name. Coming in at number 4, we have cabbage. A Men's Health magazine article described cabbage as packing more cancer fighters than an oncologist convention, and I found that so funny that I thought I'd put it in this list. Good on you. Cabbage contains sulforaphane, a chemical that encourages production of a super cancer fighting enzyme. Coming into number 3, we have garlic. Garlic is blooming great for you. There's a reason why vampires hate it. Basically, they're all dead and jealous of how immortal it can make the rest of us. Not immortal in I have to drink blood way, just immortal in a like, yay for garlic, I'm living my life way. Garlic is packed with vitamin B6, vitamin C, manganese, and a good amount of calcium. Garlic is also really good for things like toothache and sore throats. Garlic boosts the immune system and can prevent you getting a cold. It can also reduce blood pressure and lower cholesterol. Legitimately, garlic can help you live longer. Coming into number 2, we have ginseng. Ginseng has been used medicinally by the Chinese for literally thousands of years. Why? Well, because it's a root of glory that will pretty much help you live forever. Ginseng boosts energy, lowers blood sugar, lowers cholesterol, lowers stress. And also, wait for it lads, it helps with sexual dysfunction. Ginseng. Also, if that wasn't enough good news for you, there are also studies to suggest that it increases your libido. I guess, like, ginseng for the absolute win. Ginseng is regularly used as a restorative health tonic for elderly people, and it's also great for the heart and lowers your blood pressure. Ginseng, ginseng, you are peng. Okay, it's all in the name at number 1. Watch me try and pronounce it. We have jiaogulan. 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 You might not have heard of this superfood, but the name literally means immortality herb, so, you know. Apparently it helps the liver burn fat, it fights bad cholesterol, and regulates blood pressure. So basically, it's a godsend for preventing heart attacks. It's also apparently good for the immune system and good at regulating hormones. Jiaogulan is drank by a lot of Chinese people in tea, and elderly people often thank the herb for their good health. So there you go. Immortality is yours with just a few simple ingredients. Are you guys into healthy eating? What is your favorite food on this list? Let me know in the comments section down below. I for one love ginger, not because I am one, just because it makes me feel great. Yum. Also, did anyone notice how a lot of these immortality provoking things start with a G or a C?